One of my favorite things to do in this game is to put my own twist on an already existent strategy. So for a little over a week now, I've had an idea for this deck that I have dubbed Gun Control. The general concept is that we're going to be taking the Springans theme and we're going to be adding in Nightmare Corruptor Ibly, because Nightmare Corruptor Ibly does take up your normal summon, but the Springans theme doesn't. We'll also be using a Dogmatica package because of how well it synergizes with the Springans. Now there's a lot of incidental synergy with putting Nightmare Corruptor Ibly in the Springans deck, so let's head over to some replays so that we can take a look at exactly what this deck is supposed to do. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be giving our opponent Ibly by going into Almirage. Then we're going to use the field spell Great Sand Sea Golden Golgonda in order to special summon our Springans Merrymaker from the extra deck. Then we're going to use Merrymaker in order to get into our Captain Sargas. Sargas will allow us to destroy our opponent's normal summon. This will make it to where our opponent cannot special summon monsters unless they play very specific Cyberse Link 1s. Additionally, because we're summoning monsters in defense mode, our opponent won't be able to attack into our board in order to destroy their own Ibly. We will be leaving one monster in attack mode, but if a 0 attack point monster attacks a 0 attack point monster, nothing will actually happen. Now, Ibly isn't just good going first, it stops a lot of cards in the meta, including quite a few trap cards. Cards like Ice Dragon's Prison, the Eldritch package, and Gamma are good examples of cards that Ibly stops that would hurt the Springans package. Additionally, it can be used to stop Nibiru, but generally speaking, the Springans don't really care about Nibiru. It's also important to remember that you are going to be summoning an Almirage whenever you give your opponent an Ibly, so that helps to protect your field even more from cards like Dogmatica Punishment. That way it's a little safer to go ahead and cheat out your Springans Xyz monsters off of your field spell, as well as attaching your monsters from Grave as overlay units, since there is a lot of Grave interruption in this format. So probably my favorite thing about Gun Control is the fact that you don't necessarily need to draw Ibly in order to play the deck. If you don't draw Ibly, you're just kind of playing a more control-oriented version of Springans. And Springans, while they aren't a tier 1 strategy, they're not that bad. They have a very interesting concept going on with their field spell, letting you cheat out your Xyz monsters, and all of the Xyz monsters can banish themselves, similar to something like Time Thief Redoer, on the opponent's turn. They can just remove themselves from the board, and then they'll come back during the end phase. Merrymaker is your rank 4. Whenever special summoned, it lets you send a Spriggan monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then if it has 2 overlay units whenever it banishes itself during the opponent's turn, you can send a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz from your extra deck to the graveyard. This includes the Spriggan's own fusion monster, which is Titanclad. It lets you special summon out a Spriggan's monster from your extra deck or add a Spriggan's monster from your deck to your hand during the end phase. And of course you also have Titanclad, which lets you do the same thing for Dogmaticas, meaning that the deck can just move into Dogmatica during the next turn. Additionally, you have Explower, which is a very interesting rank 8. You can detach units from it during your turn. It lets you select a zone, and then you can destroy anything on that zone or next to it. So it forms an X. Anything above, below, left, or right of that zone, you can detach a number of units from it in order to destroy the cards in that zone, or in those zones. And importantly, it doesn't target either. And with the overlay units on the Xyz, the Spriggan's monsters can attach themselves from hand or graveyard to the Xyz monsters, but they can only do that once per turn per name. Getting to the field spell also isn't that bad. You get to play 9 copies of the field spell because 2 of your Spriggan spell cards, being Watch and Booty, both let you get into your field spell immediately. You also have Branga, or Banger as it's known in the OCG, which can banish itself and another Spriggan's monster in order to search for a Spriggan's card. So there's lots of ways to get into your field spell. It sucks when you don't draw it, but realistically you should have it almost every game. I also chose to include Prosperity in order to further help get to the field spell. So let's talk about some of the weaknesses that this deck has. The first major glaring weakness that I'm sure a lot of you have already noticed is that this deck is overly reliant on its field spell. If your opponent can destroy the field spell when you try and resolve it, you're going to be in a bad situation. Not only because your field spell won't resolve, but because it's a hard once per turn. You can only try to use its effect once per turn. So it doesn't matter how many of the field spell you have, you can only do it once. Another major weakness that this deck has is that the Xyz monsters can only banish themselves on the opponent's turn. So if your opponent has Disruption that can destroy or remove your Xyz monsters on your turn, you don't have a whole lot of ways to play around that. Additionally, your opponent can kind of peg your ships down to be sure that you can't banish them by using cards like Dark Ruler No More or Forbidden Droplets. There are situations where you can play around those cards, though. The Springans trap cards are pretty easily activated whenever you want. So against Forbidden Droplets, for example, you can chain your trap card and then activate the effect of your Xyz, chaining it to the trap card so that you can go ahead and banish it, even when your opponent is activating something like Forbidden Droplets or Dark Ruler No More. Additionally, Dark Ruler No More and Forbidden Droplets won't be negating your Ibli that you give to your opponent because it is their monster, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Speaking of Ibli, if your opponent is playing some kind of a cyber stack like Attic Nister, Code Talkers, or Salamangreat, they can just go ahead and link off your Ibli because all of those decks play a Link 1 Cybers monster that can just use Ibli by itself to summon it. So your initial strategy of locking your opponent out of special summons isn't going to work on those decks. But by far the biggest weakness of this deck is the price tag. You're paying as much, if not more, than most Tier 1 decks to play this, since you have to pay for the Dogmatica package, on top of a few other things. The Dogmatica package might be getting reprinted here pretty soon. The Megatons are coming, so this deck might become cheap at that point, but as of right now, it is not a cheap deck. The Springans themselves, though, they are very cheap, so if you can figure out a way to run the deck without the Dogmatica, it's a lot weaker, but it's a lot more affordable. However, even with the Dogmatica cards getting reprinted, you're still going to want to pay for something like an AA Zeus, because the card is undoubtedly a staple in this strategy. Since you can just throw so many units on one of your monsters' attack with it and then summon out a Zeus, you're definitely going to want to use that card. I had a lot of fun testing this deck. The incidental synergy is just great. I hadn't even mentioned that Gold Golgonda itself can prevent Ibli from attacking via its own effect, which is just great. And the Springans are part of the current storyline in the main core sets right now, so I'm confident this deck is going to be getting more support. I just hope that it gets the support that it needs. I think some more Xyz monsters for some more variety would be really good, and some kind of spell that can banish itself from the graveyard to protect your field spell would be much appreciated. Thanks for watching the video. Tell me in the comments section down below what you'd like to see next, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.